You're listening to the Chasing Tails Outdoor Podcast, where when you can't be in the outdoors, we bring it to you.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Chasing Tails Outdoor Podcast. We hope that this podcast inspires you guys to get outside and do anything and everything outdoors. My name is Chase. I'm one of the hosts of Chasing Tails Outdoor Podcast. Walter, the main host, unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it this week. He went out and had a baby or something like that. I want to wish him congratulations. I know I have two kids of myself. They mean the world to me. It seems like he is just over the moon right now with being a dad, so I'm going to let him do that. On this week's episode, I was able to get a good buddy of mine on, Brandon Ogden. We do hunt a same piece of public land together. Our relationship kind of started last year. It kind of grew into us texting and talking on the phone and just everything deer hunting back and forth. He's been a great resource for me on this piece of public land. Hunted way back in the past and just started hunting again last year. I'm going to be hunting it this. We're both going to be hunting it this year as well. We dove into summer scouting. This is the time of year where you're summer scouting. You need to be out there. It's going to pay off for you in the fall. He touched on a lot of things. He's been hunting this piece of public for well over a decade now. Feels like he's over the last 4 or 5 years that he's kind of really gotten it dialed in. I know we've talked about that a lot on the podcast, where Florida's one of those states where, you know, it's not necessarily going to happen for you year one, maybe not year 2, year 3, but eventually you're going to start getting it dialed in. You're going to start having the success with you want. And he's been grinding. I mean, he's been grinding for the last 10 years, and he's still just as motivated now, a decade later, as he was when he first started. So I'm hoping this episode will inspire a lot of you to get outside and start that summer scouting regimen. He's got some tips, things that he does that maybe you can incorporate into your summer scouting as well. Before we get to the episode, of course, I want to thank the patrons of the show. We love our Patreon members. Our Marco Polo group is always blowing up. We've been talking about broadheads. We've been talking about arrows. So just love chatting with those guys. Don't forget, we do have a giveaway coming up, and it's perfect for a summer. It's a perfect summer scouting package. We're doing 5 of the Simmons Trail cameras and a Browning cell cam. That should be coming up here shortly. We're going to be doing a drawing for that. So hopefully that'll get somebody set up and get them out in the woods, get those cameras set up, and we hope it gives you success this fall. I'm going to briefly touch on the Yakin' for Bass Challenge. The Yakin' for Bass Challenge is still going on. Of course, it's going on until June 15th. Currently, right now, the leader is Nick Chandler. He's actually one of the creators. He's in the creator division. He has been out hitting it hard. Pretty much it seems like he's been fishing every day. I think he's actually, he's at 108.5 inches, and he still has about 7 or 8 days left. And currently our record was 108. So he's already beat the record for the last 2 years for the Yakin' for Bass Challenge. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to get out as much as I'd like to. I'm hoping that will change here soon, and I'll definitely get out the last few days of the challenge. Maybe try to get some upgrades. I don't think that Chase's quest for 3 is going to happen this year with Nick having the success that he's had, but there's still time to sign up for the Yakin' for Bass Challenge. We have 2 categories. One is the 5 fish in length, longest length wins. The second one is biggest bass. I think Nick actually has the biggest bass of the tournament, but he can't win. He's a creator. So there's still plenty of time to sign up for this. I think currently, as it sits right now, we have 33 anglers that are fishing in the tournament. So it's $25. If you want to get in there, the money goes to a great cause. takemefishing.org. So that's all I've got for you guys this week. Maybe Walter will be back on next week. I hope that this episode inspires all of you to get outside and do some summer scouting. So on to the episode. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Chasing Tails Outdoor Podcast. Walter is out this week. As everybody knows, if you've even looked at his social media, he's been posting a ton of pictures of his new baby boy. So if you get a chance, go tell Walter congratulations. He's even been posting dad jokes online already. He's already in full dad mode with posting the dad jokes. And this week I've got a special guest. I've been talking to somebody for about 4 days. We were kind of going back and forth. Wasn't able to really nail anything down for this week, so I decided to call up my good buddy Brandon Ogden. We hunt a piece of public together, and I figured, hey, what better way to kind of dive into summer scouting since him and I are fixing to start summer scouting ourselves. So welcome to the podcast, Brandon.
Oh, thanks, Chase. Thanks, man.
Yeah. Well, before we kind of dive in, why don't you give everybody the drone view of who Brandon Ogden is?
No, man, I'm a pretty simple guy. I'm 29 years old. I live in South Florida, and I'm a fireman down here in South Florida. Man, I've been hunting public land strictly since till I was probably 13 years old. That's probably when it all started. That's when I started shooting a bow. It was a Browning Midas. I think it was a Midas, I believe. But anyway, yeah, man, I've been hunting it ever since I was 13 years old, and man, I can't get enough of it. I think the clinical term is obsessed, and I think that's what I am to deer hunting.
Right, and you've primarily been hunting. It's all Florida, right?
Yeah, it's been all of Florida, mainly central to North Florida. I did dabble in the South Florida hunting when I was younger because it was just close to home and, weekend warrior, and, that's all we could do. And was never successful. Saw a lot of deer, but was never successful.
Right. Well, who got you into hunting?
Well, I definitely have to say my dad. My dad got me started into hunting. We own a little bit of acreage in Georgia, just a small piece. And he got me into it along with my grandfather and my uncle. But my dad was one of the first ones to take me to the woods. And back then it was the big cypress, which it still is today. But we started hunting out there, and it was, hot and ATCs and gators. And I mean, that's where we started hunting was my dad. He took me to shoot my first bow down here at to an outdoor shop down here when I was about 11 or 12 years old. And man, that might have been a mistake on his part because I am hooked for life.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Well, a funny backstory for all of the listeners is this is how Brandon and I first, I guess, connected. I posted like a picture on Chasing Tails, the Chasing Tails Outdoor Instagram page, and it was on the story. It was like an Onyx post of this piece of public land that I was going to be hunting this past season. And I post it, and then all of a sudden I get a message from Brandon, and then he's like naming the WMA that I had posted. And I tried to take a few things off there, but it was still like, if you hunt this area, you would know this area. So he hits me up on Instagram, is like, hey, is this such and such WMA? And I'm like, oh man, because I didn't know you. Walter knew you, but I didn't know you at the time.
Right.
And I was like, hey, Walter, do you know who this guy is? And he's like, yeah. He's a good guy. I've chatted with him before. So I messaged you back, and then next thing you know, you and I are texting all the time, calling each other on the phone all the time, talking about hunting primarily all the time. I mean, you're ate up with it. I'm ate up with it. We're both firefighters, which just happened to be a coincidence.
Just happened to be
as well. So kind of worked out well, and I think we've become pretty good friends since. Well, it's been about a year now. that
Yeah.
you that we had that message on Instagram. So I thought that was unique. And last year we hunted a few times together on this piece of public. I didn't necessarily hunt it nowhere near as much as you have, but you
Right.
have some good, a long-standing history with this piece of public.
Yes.
How long have you been hunting this piece of public land?
Well, let's see. It's 2021. I've been hunting it well over 10 years now. I think we're coming up on almost 12. I think it's 12 years now I've been hunting this particular WMA.
Right. Now, how would you gauge yourself as a hunter right now, as in your progression? What kind of stage would you say you were at?
You know, honestly, if in the stage of my hunting career, my hunting throughout the years, I would say I would be, I don't want to say, I would say probably just above average. And when I mean of just above average, I don't mean like I'm going out there and killing a deer every time I sit in the woods. But my encounters and my being able to find the right habitat, find bedding areas, and get on deer, period, and see more deer has exponentially gone up the past. I would say for sure the past 5 years. You know, there were some struggles when I first started, just like everybody else. You know, it's a new thing. You're just trying to figure it out. And if anybody's hunted Florida, they know it's so different. The habitat, the terrain, where these animals go from South Florida to North Florida. I mean, the terrain difference is unbelievable, and where the deer cohabitate is different. But yeah, these last probably 5 years, I've really honed in on, you know, not just this WMA in particular, but any WMA that I've walked onto. I'm able to, you know, cyber scout it beforehand or walk onto this piece of public and go, okay, this is where my starting point is. And man, you just got to keep going and keep trying. That's the biggest thing I could tell you is just don't give up, and just you got to have that fire to keep doing it, because Florida is a super, super tough state, and anybody will tell you that hunts here frequently.
Right, right. We Walter and I talk about this ad nauseum on the podcast about especially public land in Florida,
Oh,
like how
yeah.
difficult public land can be in Florida, and certain areas of the state are just better. I mean, there's just the better deer habitat. The numbers are higher. But as a whole, for the state of Florida, pretty much anybody who from out of state or anything comes down here, they're like, "Oh yeah, that's probably the toughest state to get on a deer, let alone a mature buck
No doubt, no doubt.
on public land."
On public land, yeah.
Right. Yeah, we talk about that all the time. So you said the last 5 years. The last 5 years, you feel like that you've kind of put things together a lot. It's coming to you more naturally.
Correct.
Talk a little bit about the early years of you hunting public land in Florida.
Well, you know, the early years, my dad, you know, like I said, he got me into hunting. But you know, he was a working man. He was a fireman. You know, he was a fireman as well. But he was also working 2 and 3 jobs a lot of times for me and the family. So he didn't, you know, he was focused mainly on work, you know, and he didn't get a lot of exposure to what we have now available with all the hunting shows and, you know, all these articles about public land and how it's really starting to come to the surface and all these new techniques and everything like that. So, you know, we were always under the impression, it's actually funny when I look back at it now, you know, we would go in, you know, like I said, during the summertime, whatever, July, August, our season usually opens in Florida. Well, depending, South Florida, usually like last week of July or something like that. And then, you know, throughout the states, usually mid-September. But anyway, you know, we would go in the summertime, and, you know, we'd find trails, and, you know, we would find, you know, rubs and sign of deer, you know, in the summertime. So we'd hang our cameras, and actually we would pick out a tree that we're going to climb and everything like that. And, you know, like I said, this particular WMA, I've been hunting it for well over 10 years. So this WMA in particular, I remember because we would go in there, you know, and we would find a tree we want to hang up on. And the bad thing was is we weren't very mobile. I mean, we had climbers but we would just hang lock-ons in a spot where we had deer trails, and we would sit there all year, and we'd go sit in the same stand, every day. We'd go up there for 4 or 5 days at a time and just hunt the same stand, or maybe have another stand, but we weren't very mobile. We were kind of stagnant and complacent. That's another word I'll use. We were just complacent, and we just got stuck in our ways. And we saw deer, but throughout the years of me doing it, it was the same cycle. When you go sit in the same stand every day, it never fails. When the season starts, you sit in that tree you marked, the deer are right there. They're all around you. They're coming by within range. Sometimes you get a shot, sometimes you don't. But as the season goes on, the deer become more and more wary of you. So they just start. I noticed that I would see in these deer at anywhere between 80 and bow range at that time. And as the season progressed and it got to gun season, they would just be further and further away, or I wouldn't see any deer at all, or I'd just be blowing deer out every time I walk in. And I would get frustrated because I was like, man, why aren't I seeing deer? The sign's here. The sign's here. Well, obviously at that time I didn't know, because I was younger, that I was just absolutely obliterating that area with my sign. And just, they knew when I walked in there. They smelled my scent and everything like that. So I wasn't really, wasn't aware of all that in my younger years. And like I said, in the past 5 years, or probably 8 years now, probably 8 years ago now, I started to adapt, started watching these guys like the Hunting Public, the Hunting Beast, and guys like that, starting to really adapt their tactics in a sense of, just jumping in there and getting in there and doing it, and don't be complacent, and constantly move, and that's where I started really to hone my skills. And, it was a little bit, it was frustrating, but I mean, at that time I was just sitting in the same stand being frustrated, not seeing anything. And, when you're sitting in that 95-degree heat, or, you're making that, couple hour drive to this WMA and for a couple days, and just not seeing anything, and you're getting frustrated, something's got to change. And, I jumped fully into, that tactic of the Hunting Public and the Hunting Beast, just jumping in there, trying to get close to what would be their bedroom. Florida's kind of hard for that because they can just bed everywhere. And honestly, just keep moving. Don't settle for mediocre sign or semi-fresh sign. Just keep going until you find the good stuff, and don't be afraid to move. Don't be afraid to take risks sometimes, because a lot of times when you take that risk, it pays off, and for me, obviously paying off means seeing deer. And eventually you're going to get to that point where you're good enough that you're going to see deer and be in range. So I'm not quite to that point, but I'm at least seeing the deer and getting close. Just can't seem to put the arrow through one, or to get one down yet.
Well, I mean, you've been able to do that over the years. You just maybe not necessarily as consistent
Correct.
as you would like.
Correct. Yeah, that's probably a better way to put it. I mean, I usually kill a deer or two a year, which is fantastic, and I'm very ecstatic about that. But as the years have gone on, I've got a little older. I guess I kind of want to shoot the big buck,
Right.
I guess, in a sense. But you and me have had long discussions about this, and that if you can't kill a big buck if there's not a big buck there, and I think sometimes I just overanalyze things, and just need to take what I can get and just enjoy every moment. And that's what I try to do every time I'm in the woods.
Right. Yeah. You and I have had quite a few conversations about like wanting to get a registry,
Yeah.
wanting to reach that like milestone. You've been close.
I've been close. Yes.
To killing a registry, for sure. But that's kind of been like at the back of your mind. It seems like it's like, oh man, I want to get a registry. I want to get a registry. And of course, I was like, it'll happen. It'll happen. I mean, it's not necessarily on Florida public land that there's just a ton of registry bucks
correct
walking around. I mean, and you do get within and you pass on deer. You get within range of smaller bucks, and it seems to me like you really like to do a lot of in-season scouting as well.
Yes.
Like you'll hunt a little bit. You're like, okay, it's not happening here. And then you'll go and put like 5-6 miles down looking for deer sign.
Yes.
And-
Yes. That's been a big one. That's been a big one the in season.
right. Well, I want to talk about like summer scouting. You and I
Okay.
are probably fixing to start hitting it hard. I've been a little distracted with the Yakking for Bass Challenge. Had some personal things kind of going on. Haven't really been thinking that much about hunting, but you're always texting me something about hunting. So it always kind of keeps me kind of dialed in a little bit. Like, okay, I need to start thinking more about hunting. And there's some other guys that we've got, like in our Patreon group, our Marco Polo. You've got Brett, who's just hardcore. He's 365. It seems like he's wanting to do something scouting wise for hunting. He's been sending us polos. He's been out putting out cameras. He's been sending me pictures, and so it's in the back. It's at the back of my mind, at least pretty much all the time, because I'm seeing others do it. And I right now I've been slacking because I've got 0 cameras out right now anywhere. And normally I would have at least several out somewhere, like on main roads or just something, maybe just to
Right.
catch anything. Like, all right, have the does dropped their fawns yet? Am I catching any bachelor groups of bucks? Is there any bucks that I might want to be like, okay, maybe I want to try to focus a little bit more on that buck?
Right.
And I know, like I said, the Yakking for Bass Challenge will be over June 15th. And then my mind can strictly go to hunting deer at that point. So my plan is to get out. I pretty much know my private sections. I mean, I've been hunting the one for over a decade, kind of like you on this piece of public. I know it. And then I have another piece that I've hunted probably, this would be like my 4th year hunting it. So I feel like I've kind of getting it dialed in for the most part as well. And on this piece of public that we're hunting, I hunted that piece of public about a decade ago, before this past year. Like, I hunted it 1 year, a decade ago. I was fortunate enough, I did kill a buck that year. I just happened to be where the food was at the time. Like, there were the acorns were dropping like crazy in this one area. This 9-point comes out at like 28 yards, and I just happened to be like, at that time, I was really dialed in with my bow. I was shooting all the time. Shot him, double lunged him, found him, and I'd actually shot at a doe on the way into the stand that day. That whole area looks different now, though, because it was like a clear cut back then. So now it's all
Right.
like 10-year-old pines. Looks completely different. And I had hunted primarily private since then. Like, I had done some quota hunts in the past before there. And to me, last year, it was kind of like, okay. And we have another good buddy, Mike Tringali. He's been on the podcast. So he's hunted this WMA for years and years, it seems like. So him and I kind of went out and we scouted quite a bit. But it's kind of like, even in the summers, it's just kind of daunting, it seems like, especially like if you've got like a bigger WMA or whatever. I feel almost like you're kind of like, okay, I'm going to pick this section. Like some people, I'm going to pick just this section kind of to focus on for a little while, and maybe not worry about the rest of the area as much, and maybe just get honed in on this area before I just start ping ponging all around everywhere.
Right.
And you've kind of dialed your areas in over the years, and I know there's been changes because, like with anything on some of these pieces of public land, they're constantly in there cutting what was really good. Now it's a clear cut, so it's not as good anymore, or there's flooding that goes on in the swamps, and you can't even hunt back in certain areas. So for
Right.
this year, what is your primary objective for summer scouting? Like, what do you plan on? Like, what's your goal?
Well, I mean, this year for summer scouting, I mean, my goal is to just discover new areas. Like I said, I've been hunting this piece of WMA for over 10 years, and I know a lot of this ground. But I've got lots of pins on my phone, which I'm sure a lot of us do. I've got hundreds of pins that I need to go check out some new areas. And, I may not necessarily jump right in there and hang a camera per se, but I at least want to get boots on the ground. That's for sure. Checking out new areas, and if I'm just stumped and I can't figure out a new area to go, I might go back into some of my old areas and see if they're still walking through them and stuff like that. But for this year, I'm honestly, you and me found a spot on this piece of public last year, the end of last year, that we named Paradise City. I found some really good sign. I went back in there in turkey season, and I actually retrieved a camera that had been in there that was another thing I did different this year. I let a camera soak from, we set that camera probably October, and I picked it up in turkey season. So like March, April, something like that.
Right.
And, it was interesting to see all the data that I got on there and all the sign from, last year that they had made. I walked through there turkey hunting, but kind of scouting at the same time. And man, some of the sign that I found, and I was texting you back and forth pictures and stuff like that. I just got jacked. I was ready. I'm ready. I'm ready.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
ready. And like I said, I'm really, really intrigued with that. I want to walk it a little bit more and kind of, I guess you'd say, just fan out a little bit, go a little bit away from the sign, and see if it does it become more sign further away, or and I've really honed in on these short pines. That's really what I've been focusing on this WMA in particular, is the short pines. Trying to tuck in tight to those short pines, and if there's food on the edges, I mean, that's great. This time of year, though, during the summer, I'm mainly looking for heavy beat down trails, and I'll put a camera there. I'm not necessarily looking for a buck, because I'm just not a buck magnet. I've very rarely gotten pictures of bucks in velvet, except for 2 years ago. I got a picture of him multiple times, and I actually killed him within 200 yards where I had the camera. I had a suspicion where he was bedding, and when he shedded the velvet, I didn't get any more pictures of him on that camera. I never got another picture of him. He just moved areas. I guess he wasn't in a bachelor group anymore. And ended up killing him with a bow at like 10 yards. So that was a nice one. But when it comes into summer scouting, for me, it's mainly finding those trails and finding new areas. If I find rubs and stuff like that, that's great. But a lot of times that buck sign, it doesn't really come into play until closer till the rut, which for us, which I've found over the years running cameras in this particular WMA, it's usually the last week of September till about mid-October is when they're somewhere in between. That time period is when the bucks are on their feet in daylight.
Right.
So, but no, I mean, as for the summer scouting part, just getting around, man, moving around and just checking out every square inch that you can, getting boots on the ground. I mean, I'm already walking right now around my house trying to get back in shape, because this COVID belly has gotten big.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, we're fortunate. I'm very fortunate. I've got an e-bike, so it helps me get some places, but you can't check out the woods on an e-bike. You got to get off and walk.
Right.
I mean, I'm looking to put, hopefully 6 to 8 miles a day, and find new sign and put lots of pins and maybe a camera. Right.
Now, so when you're doing your summer scouting, what will make you want to hunt it during the fall? Like, is it your cameras, what your cameras are telling you? What basically the sign has, where you're just so impressed with the sign that you're like, okay, I'm going to give this a shot in the fall?
Yeah, I mean, really for me, it's just seeing the numbers of deer, really. And, you've got to take into consideration, too, where you're getting these pictures. Is this a pinch, or is this on the edge of bedding? Is this near an oak tree where oaks possibly drop in, or, they're possible food sources? I mean, for me, really, it's what really intrigues me is if I find a isolated piece or some piece that's difficult to get to, and it's got multiple exit routes for the deer, whether it's whether it's does or bucks. I mean, if there's old historical buck sign, that's great. But I honestly rather see more does on my camera than bucks. And I'll tell you why. Just from my experience, when I get a lot of does during the summer, they tend to hang around the same areas. They kind of do like a loop. Early summer, they'll be on the camera a lot. Early season, like beginning of archery, they'll kind of fade away. But as the rut comes back, they go back to these bedding areas. At least from what I've found, and the bucks will be not far behind. So I really key in on the areas that have a lot of sign and a lot of foot traffic. Deer traffic. That's what I mainly look for. The isolated rubs, not so much, but a lot of deer trails in general just means more deer and a better chance to actually get a shot at a buck.
Right. What about other hunters? Like, are you when you're scouting these areas, are you like, okay, it looks like other people are hunting here, maybe I should stay away, or how do you approach that?
Yeah, a lot of times, it happens sometimes where I got a spot on the map I want to get to that looks great, and I get there and there's the flag parade. There's tons of flags and people, got their hunt dates that they're going to hunt this area this year or whatever. And it doesn't really bother me too much. It used to bother me a lot, honestly, when I was younger, and I'd find it, I would just get angry because I was like, man, this, I've been looking at this spot all along. This is going to be the perfect area. This is it. Well, now I just don't even worry about it. I'm like, all right. I kind of make a mental note, like, all right, they're going to be in here, and I try to be courteous to other hunters. If I know they're going to be in there and it looks like there's a lot of foot traffic, it looks like maybe they trimmed up a tree or something like that, they're going to hang a stand. I'll make a mental note, like, all right, don't go in here. Or if I'm hunting, or if I got to walk by that area, I might try to meet the guy the first day and just let him know, or I'm hunting around here, most of the time I just try to stay away and just try to get away from people. I mean, that's kind of my biggest thing, is just get away from people, just get far away. And it doesn't always mean there's deer further away from people, but at least I like to stay away from people. It's one less thing to put into the formula of not getting winded or scented or getting caught by the deer.
Oh yeah, definitely. They're not as on edge for sure.
No.
When they're at least coming in, most of the time.
Well, I was gonna say, you're correct. They're not as on edge until they get a whiff of something,
right?
Because when you and me have had this conversation before, it's like, would you rather hunt an area that people walk by a trail every day and then the deer come walk out, or would you rather hunt where nobody ever walks by, but then one person walks by randomly that day? What's going to spook the deer? What do they get used to? What do they don't get used to?
Right.
And that's some of the issues I have faced hunting some of these really remote areas where I've never seen anybody, not on camera, not anything. And I've been on there on a bad wind, or just walked a little too far to hang a scent wick or something like that. And that little bit of smell difference, they'll blow for days, it seems like,
right.
Just because they're not used to it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's for sure.
So
that's a good point.
Yeah.
On that. Well, how many cameras are you running? How many cameras do you plan to put out?
Oh, on this WMA in particular, I'm probably going to run, I'd say probably 10. I'm going to try and run 10 on this WMA. It really depends on what I find and, what I'm trying to find out. If for some reason I get a big buck on camera and I know it's not an area I'm going to get him during the fall, I might push in a little deeper, or just, like I said, fan it out a little bit and try to get another picture of him, find out where he's living and if he's going to live there.
Right. And you're running, what are you running, a mix between cell cams and your regular trail cams?
Yeah. I started the cell cam game a couple years ago. I'm running the Spartans, and man, I've been super happy with them. I mean, they're like everything. Sometimes they had issues in the beginning, which I haven't had issues, knock on wood, recently. But man, it's so vital, especially for me who, I hunt not close to home. So having that, by the second information is huge,
Right.
And I've actually killed deer, that way, believe it or not. And it's crucial, especially just for knowing that data right then and there and not having to disturb some of these areas that I go into. Because some of these areas that I go into or plan to go into, I'm scouting my way in and I'm probably going to get one hunt in there because it's tight.
Right.
So having that camera set up there already, from weeks before, letting them get used to it or whatever, and getting the intel I think it's been a very big game changer in the public land game.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. I mean, like I said, the less you have to go into an area where you're not going and checking trail cameras all the time and intruding, putting your sit in there, and like you mentioned before, you're mobile now. So last year you went to a saddle.
I did.
It was your first year in the saddle, right?
Yes. It was my first year in the saddle, and I'm a believer, and I'm a saddle hunter now.
Right.
I am eating up with it, and I'm last year I heard about the saddles, and it was becoming the big thing, and I said I wanted something a little bit mobile, because before that I was doing a lock on my back with sticks and everything like that, and I was setting it all up, and it was good. I got efficient with it. But now that I've got this on my, now that I've got this saddle on and my little platform and stuff like that, it's been phenomenal. And I tested it last year for a full year. I sat in it every sit. And I'm talking, I hunted probably over 45, 50 days last year. And every sit except for one was in a saddle.
Right.
And I mean, it was great. It's a game changer for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yep. It is. I mean, hands down, the way to bow hunt for sure.
No, for the bow hunt, 100%. There's no other way.
Right. Yeah. Bow hunting, it's great. And you even got your dad into the saddle game, right? He's going to be rocking a saddle this year.
Yeah, he's going to be rocking a saddle this year. He was old school with the lock on and the safety system and all that kind of stuff, and big API climber that weighs about 40 pounds, and he complains that it's heavy. One of those guys. But I've got him into it mainly just because of the lightness. And I just told him, like, look, there's no standard way to do this. You can do it any way you want. There's really no rules. You can go as light as you want. You can go as heavy as you want. And I think for him, getting older, I think it just gets him out there in the woods more, and I love that. I love seeing my dad out there, and I get to hunt with him occasionally. And, because he just doesn't want to go as far as I do, obviously.
Right.
But it's nice. It's nice. I cherish those moments with my dad, and I'm glad to see him out there this year more with the saddle.
Oh, yeah. Side note, I mean, I just met your dad not too long ago because I was having an issue with my bow, and apparently he is really into archery and competitions and has his own press and vise and paper tuner. I mean, he's got it all at his house. And I'd been talking back and forth with you about, hey, I've been having this issue with my bow. We never could get it kind of figured out. So went over and worked with him for a while the other day. Great guy. I mean, he showed me his new saddle and all that good stuff. And I plan on going back again because we think we've pretty much got something figured out. But we want to do a little bit more testing and stuff. So it was really cool to get to meet your dad, and I got to hang out with him for a couple of hours. I know you were jealous, but
very, very jealous. As I'm there sweating doing the lawn, and you're like, "Oh, hey, what's up, buddy? I'm in the AC. It feels great in here."
Yeah, exactly. Hanging out.
Thanks, bud.
Hanging out with your old man. Well, I mean, as far as me on this piece of public this year, I just really want to get to know it more. Last year, I never really hunt the areas that I hunted last year. I never really hunted those areas 10 years ago. I did kind of, but it's one of those ones where you're basically trekking back, whatever. It took you like 45 minutes to walk to some of these areas and passed up all these other primo areas because I really didn't scout that much probably 10 years ago. Like I would, I mean, I did hanging hunts all the time, but it was more of just like, oh yeah, I'm going to try this area today. I may go try this area next time I hunt in here. And I definitely was nowhere near the hunter that I am now 10 years ago. That's for sure. Not even close. I mean, I've only been hunting for, I think this will be my 14th season as a deer hunter.
Really?
14th season. Yep, I started back in 2007. 2007, I killed my first deer in 2007. It took me, like I said, I kind of did some of the things you're talking about. You would just go hunt the same area over and over again. You're not getting the results that you wanted. And I ended up buying a climber, started moving around. Success started going in the direction that I wanted it. I use a lot of cameras, which I'll say for a lot of my success. And as most people know, I'm super lucky. So like this past year, it was, like I said, a kind of a random setup, and this beautiful buck walks out in front of me on that piece of public land. Well, actually, two out of the 3 times that I actually hunted it last year. I had bucks within range last year, and they were good areas, and it kind of made me go back and look more. And even during turkey season this year, I felt like I was more scouting for deer than I was actually even for turkeys. I'm not like the biggest turkey hunter. I mean, I like to go. I think it's fun. I really like hunting with a buddy. I like the camaraderie of turkey hunting. Yeah, I'm just not ate up with it nowhere near as much as I am deer hunting. And I marked a bunch of areas on the map for deer, more than turkey or anything. I'm like, I was like, this looks like a nice area. It doesn't really look like anybody's ever here. Some of the areas I kind of just like, nope, definitely. I don't think I want to put any time over here. So I definitely want to get out, get some cameras out. And now I've got the e-bike, so it'll make at least checking cameras and stuff a lot easier for me. So yeah, I just want to get out there, keep learning that particular area for the most part, and then maybe branch out some. I feel like I do need to put some hunts in on some of the other areas just because I've even during like scouting for turkeys and stuff like that, I was like, yeah, this area, I mean, it looks like it has potential, and it didn't really necessarily look like there was a lot of people that had maybe hunted it before. So I really want to kind of go check out some of those areas that I noticed during turkey season in some of the other areas of the piece of public myself. But it's more of I don't have it dialed in like you do. Like you've been hunting for over 10 years, pretty much 10 consecutive years, right? Like you've never gotten out of there.
I've never gotten out of there.
You've really got it dialed in. And my other buddy Trent, he does too for the most part, or at least a couple of the areas. He's pretty much got those dialed in, and he knows how the swamps run. He knows where like ridges are and things like that you just don't know unless you put boots on the ground for the most part. Like you have to go in. So I plan on putting on some miles in there, and I feel like I kind of know what they're doing, especially kind of how they're kind of transitioning whenever it's kind of the rut time of the areas I need to look for the rut. So I plan on putting a pretty good little bit of time during archery season in there for the most part. Muzzleloader now kind of comes where it's like Midwest hunt area or whatever. So I may not be there to hunt maybe for a couple of days during muzzleloader. But last year was kind of a weird year because muzzleloader always seemed to be good, really good. And apparently it was dead in there during muzzleloader for the most part.
Yeah, it was.
And
it was
more
really
during
weird.
Like that second week of October, it was on fire because you were in there, I was in there, Trent was in there, your buddy. I mean, that one day we all had potential shots at bucks.
Oh yeah.
On one day. No. So it seemed like it was really hot during that time. And there was a deer that Trent and I had on camera this past year that looked really young, had just had a really nice rack for as young and as small as his body looked. So maybe we can, hopefully I can kind of try to figure out where he's at. We had him early season, and then we had another picture of him during rifle season in a different area. So hopefully he made it this past season. And there's some good bucks, and that area's got some good bucks. I mean, there's potential there to kill a registry buck. Like, there's definitely the potential is there. And, I mean, 2 years ago, you were within 55 yards of, like, a 130-inch monster. So, you were close.
Yeah, that was a close one. I hunted I hunted that buck for 2 years. I ended up, it was just a weird day. He got behind me. He came out of nowhere about 10:30 in the morning during bow season. And he was about 80 yards away when I saw him, and I was shaking like a leaf because I thought it was a branch I saw. And when I fully turned around, it was that big old buck. And I called him in. He got to about 55, and the wind switched, and he blew out of there. Well, I spread out cameras looking for him, and sure enough, I found him, and I hunted him. Probably hunted him a little bit too aggressively. But anyway, I didn't get on him that year. The next year, I got a picture of him again in the same exact spot. And unfortunately, I could not be there the opening day of muzzleloader. And a friend of mine, he actually ended up killing the buck. And scoring, I think it was like 128 or something like that.
Right.
So it was a true monster. That one kind of hurt a little bit, but I was happy to see him kill it. He's a good guy, and he hunted hard for it. So it was good, but that's hunting, and you got to enjoy your friends and be happy for them, and I helped him cape it out and everything like that. So it was nice. It was a nice deer, and just on to the next one.
Right. So what are you going to do this summer to try to get that registry?
This summer, definitely going to buy some more cell cameras, hopefully. As long as the wife doesn't see it.
Right.
She's shaking her head at me right now.
Oh yeah.
No, I mean, honestly, like I said, you just got to be consistent and be out there. I just think that's the biggest thing. I listen to lots of podcasts, your guys especially, and the big buck killers, the guys that kill bucks consistently, they're consistently out there. And that's it. They cover a lot of ground. When everybody's going back to the hotel or to camp for a 4-hour, 5-hour lunch, and then go out in the afternoon, that 4 or 5 hours, take a 30-minute break, have some lunch, get some water in you, but then get out there and keep scouting. You just never know when you're going to find the next good spot, or just a spot that maybe you overlooked. Maybe you've walked by this chunk of woods 100 times and something catches your eye that day, and you go in there and it's just a mega. I mean, there's just deer trails everywhere, buck beds, which I haven't found too many of those, but just heavy buck sign with trails and food. You just find the trifecta. You just find everything. But I mean, for this summer, I'm just going to search out new areas on this piece of public, places I haven't been, places where I've said, oh, I need to go check that out, and never did. And try to hang more cameras in areas to try to get a bead on, is there deer coming through here? Are they not? Just looking for that fresh sign. That's the biggest thing I look for. I'm sure at a later date, maybe we'll talk about in-season scouting and stuff like that. But for this one, for summer scouting, definitely just trying to cover as much ground as you can. Get familiar with the area you're going to be in, the area you're going to hunt. It could help you in the future just locate more deer. And just knowing the property's never a bad thing. Never a bad thing at all.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, that's my goal, is just to keep learning that piece and cover as much ground as I can this summer, and maybe find a little hidden gem or something in there that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna focus on that area when it comes rut time. But I mean, in this area, it does seem like there's quite a few. The doe population is flourishing, I would say.
Yes,
on this WMA.
Very high. Very high.
Yeah. So it is one of those WMAs where you definitely could go out and shoot your does.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Sure.
If you wanted to. And then hopefully finding an area where, okay, these does are going to be, the bucks are probably going to be using these areas, scent check these does, they're going to be cruising these areas, and to get in there when the time's right. But,
that sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, man. Well, Walter always likes to hit guests with this question, so I'm going to hit you with it because Walter's going to be listening to this podcast, probably holding his new baby. If you could go back to your earliest hunting self, give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oof. I've heard you ask that question a bunch of times, and I thought I'd be ready for this question, but I mean, honestly, if I could go back in time and tell my younger self something, is to stop being complacent. And I mean, that's the biggest thing I could say is just stop being complacent and don't be afraid to take a little risk. When I mean risk, I mean not doing something dangerous, but doing something, deer hunting wise, you're not comfortable with. Like, man, I don't want to get too close to the bedding area. I might spook them. Well, if you don't get close enough, you may not never see them.
Right.
And trying new things, hunting new spots, and sometimes just setting up to set up and just slow down a little bit. Enjoy what's around you. Enjoy the woods. Enjoy nature. Enjoy every sunrise. Everything like that. I mean, just really sit back, enjoy it, and that's why we hunt. That's what I could tell my younger self is just don't be complacent and enjoy everything, man. Don't take anything for granted.
Oh yeah,
That's pretty much it.
That's good, man. That's
don't know if that's cliche or not, but
hey, if it is, it is. But if that's what makes you get out in the woods and try harder, push further, you got to use whatever motivation you got, and maybe that'll help somebody else who's just now getting into hunting. Be like, oh, okay, well, this guy's been hunting for this long, and this is what he said he would tell himself. So maybe I should kind of heed that advice. So, all right, everybody. Well, I want to thank Brandon for coming on the show. It was kind of like, hey, man, can you come on the show? I need you. We got to release an episode for this week. I think you did a great job. I hope this inspired everybody to get out there and start scouting. Now's the time. Get out and put them cameras out, put the boots on the ground, and hopefully you'll find some success come this fall. But no matter what you do, get outside and enjoy the great outdoors.